On a relative basis, yes, I've had it all. Lots of trade-offs, lots of sacrifices, but I think somehow I've had the strength to power through all of that. I had to work harder to prove that the color and the gender actually should not be counted against me. I could do a damn good job too.
Hello, everyone.
It's for you.
What a great warm welcome.
You.
I'm Margaret Brennan of CBS News, and this is Indra Nooyi.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
I love that quote. I can do a damn good job, too. Indra, actually, you did a damn good job for an extremely long period of time when it comes to the average length of a CEO's lifespan at the top of a corporation. You were at Pepsi 12 years, average lifespan for CEOs about 5. How did you stay competitive for so long?
So just before I answer that question, let me just make a bunch of opening remarks. First, it's great to be here with the sisterhood. So it's just wonderful to be here. And, I looked at the lineup of people, Priyanka Chopra, Oprah Winfrey, the glamorous Anna Wintour. I'm an unemployed, retired CEO. That I'm here with all of them, awesome. But let me just tell you why I stayed in the job as a CEO for 12 years and PepsiCo for 24. Way back when, we made a decision that we wanted to make PepsiCo the defining corporation of the 21st century. When people looked back and said, what were the great companies of the 21st century, we wanted PepsiCo to be among that list. Mm-hmm. You don't become a defining company just because you delivered good financials. You become a defining company because you did something much more than that. And to us, it was performance with purpose. And performance with purpose is something that was a long journey. And every year, you added a new layer of richness and complexity to this whole notion of purpose. So if I hadn't gotten tired after about 10 or 11 years, I would have done this for 25 years because I really wanted to build in purpose into PepsiCo in a way that nobody could change it well into its future.
What do you mean purpose?
So think about what PepsiCo could do for society rather than just financial returns. How do we make sure our portfolio is balanced between the fun products but more better for you and good for you products? Mm-hmm. How do we make sure we create a company that does the right thing by the environment, water use, plastics recycling, reducing the carbon footprint, supporting our farmers, and more importantly, and I'd say most importantly, how do we take the employees we have and make sure that when they come to PepsiCo to make a living, they can also have a life? So how do we allow them to bring their whole self to work? What kind of support systems can we provide to them so that they feel like PepsiCo is an extension of their life rather than I've got to go to work, park myself at the door, pick myself up again when I leave to go home. So we wanted to provide all the support systems to make families, women in particular, feel like PepsiCo is the place I want to come to work in. And so all of these take time. I wanted to get that journey well on its way. And it's that inner drive that kept me going for a decade, or more than a decade.
Well, it was your performance that put you on the map, but the fact of your gender and that being unusual at the top also got you a lot of attention. And I wonder how you feel about that, because I know personally for me, when people brought up my gender, it made me a little uncomfortable. And you're the only female Sunday show host. Okay, you want to be known for your work. After I had my son, it kind of changed things for me. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that experience. And I'm wondering what your process was like that, thinking as a mother, as this Fortune 500 CEO.
Look, very early in my time at PepsiCo, I decided that I was going to be one of the guys, but I was also going to be a woman. So I was not going to allow them to push me around, which used to happen quite often. And the second thing is I had two daughters. My first one was about 8 or 9 years when I came to PepsiCo. My second one was 9 months old when I joined PepsiCo.
Wow.
And so, and I was in the middle of this large-scale transformation of the company from 94 to 2000, working 24/7. So basically, I decided that come, like 5 o'clock, my kids are allowed to come to work and hang around. They're allowed to play, they're allowed to sleep in my office, do whatever. That's the price of having me work at PepsiCo. Because if I couldn't go home and take care of the kids, my office was going to become, the place where they were going to hang out.
What level were you? This is before you were CEO.
No, well before I was CEO. I was head of corporate strategy.
And
I was
your
reporting
bosses
to the
were okay
CEO.
with that?
Beg your pardon?
Your bosses were okay with that?
Did they have a choice? I mean, look, if you want me, that's the price of having me. All right? And it comes down to if you establish a niche for yourself that you're competent and make yourself indispensable based on competence, what can they do without you? If they didn't want me because they didn't want kids running around, so get somebody else. Get a guy who couldn't do the job as well. So I was okay with that. So if you wanted me, my kids were going to be around. If my kid's school called and said, oh, your daughter's got a sprained ankle, I was going to leave and go to Sacred Heart to look at that sprained ankle. That's the price of having me. And it worked.
How much resistance did you get to that?
0.
Really?
In fact, I'll give you the other side. When Steve Reinemund became the CEO in 2000, I had a daughter in boarding school at that time and one daughter in Sacred Heart. And if the boarding school called and said, hey, we have a problem, we need you to come, and my husband was traveling and I had to pick up the little daughter, he'd say, tell you what, I'll go to the boarding school, you go to Sacred Heart or the other side. And he always helped me out, always. And when you have bosses like that, it's a piece of cake.
Wow. You've said in the past, and this is one of these harsh realities that I think a lot of women talk about amongst themselves and don't talk publicly about a lot, which is this feeling that their biological clocks are in competition or at odds with their professional trajectories. Do you think there is such a thing as balance?
Look, it's not an opinion, what I'm going to tell you. It's fact. Just think about it. Having a kid and having to manage through their life, those checklists, the home, that is a full-time job. Whether you like it or not, it's a full-time job. I talk to so many stay-at-home parents. They are just inundated with the amount of work they have to do. Going to work is a full-time job, whatever job you do, because you're working in a pyramid. As you move up the pyramid, people are eliminated. And now with so many technologies that are coming in, you've got to be a lifelong student. And with productivity, people are being shed very fast. And so you've really got to double down and work even harder to move up the pyramid. That is more than a full-time job.
Yeah.
Now, compound that with the fact that many of us have aging parents and we may have to take care of them. That adds a little bit of stress. And on top of that, the fourth area is not a stress, but it's a fact. If you have a spouse, the spouse demands attention too. And as you, not true? And as you move up the pyramid, they demand more attention. And so, the fact of the matter is, how do you balance all of these priorities? It's like, I hate to say this, guys, I'd go home and my first thing I made a beeline for was my old flannel nightgown.
Right.
Okay? My kids thought that was great because if mom got into the old flannel nightgown, she wasn't going anywhere for that night. My husband would come in from work and he'd go, not that flannel nightgown again. So at that time, you have to choose. Husband, kids, how do you do this? So always the kids won out because, they're high on the list. So what can I say? But you know what? The good news? I'm still with the same husband.
Yes.
Still with the same guy. He's a good man, I tell you, he's a good man. I couldn't be married to me. He's married to so.
How have you sustained a marriage throughout all of this, and a good one?
He's a very good guy. I mean, just a gem of a person. And something worked well in the selection process, I guess. But he is just a gem of a guy. More importantly, he moved and switched jobs when I moved from Chicago to Connecticut. So he gave up some of his advancement to help me move ahead, which is very unusual. But
did you talk about that choice?
Yeah, we talked at length about it. And he said, I don't want to hold you back, so go ahead and I'll figure out what to do. Now, he did exceedingly well in his career, but I think he could have risen even more had we stayed in Chicago. But we moved to the East Coast, and he has supported me all the way. We'd plan our schedule 6 months, 1 year in advance. We'd make sure we have the right help if one of us wasn't home for the night. So the man's a gem. Now, look, he's a stickler for other things, lists and organization, which I'm incapable of. But the fact of the matter is, he's put up with all of that. And he's been a great husband, and I owe a lot to what he has been for me. Yeah.
How old were you when you had your children?
Oh, my first one was, I think I was 28, and the second one when I was 30-something, so 37, 38. And so I had 2 kids, and they're 9 years apart. So
was that a matter of just staggering it with your career?
no, I was in a car crash after I had the first one, and she was 2. So I was pretty banged up and broken. So I had to rebuild my body after that, and then had the second kid.
Because I wonder, my girlfriends and I sometimes joke, like, oh, did we not get the memo that we were supposed to have had our kids when we were in our 20s? Because there is that conflict of the schedule, that, as you talk about the pyramid moving up, that the level of difficulty gets higher. And I wonder how you counseled some of your employees as an executive when they were thinking about this.
Well, here's the problem. If you want to have kids and a job, you've got to start thinking about the cohort group that you want to move up with. This is a real issue. See, when you graduate from business school, you graduate with the class. If you want to stay with the class and move up, and constantly think about the group you're moving up with, you're going to have to really think about, do you have your kids before you go to business school or after you come to work? Because if you have young kids and you don't have a fantastic support system, we can talk about what that means, a fantastic support system, you will end up making some trade-offs at work. You will, because it is brutal. I mean, look, just when you think everything is going well, you'll get that call saying the kid's ill or they want their mommy. Unfortunately, they always want their mom. No, fortunately, they always want their mommy. Fortunately, they always want their mommies, okay? And so the number of calls I've gotten, I want my mommy. Okay, fine, mommy's coming. And I'm going to tell you guys, I lived 15 minutes away from work. When my kids had the flu, even though we had my mother living with us or babysitters, I would zip home every 2 or 3 hours and make sure that temperature was okay, they were given their medication, they'd had a soup or something to eat, and I'd zip back. So the kids knew that I was always there. In a moment's notice, I could get to them. But I think that if we don't put aside what our normal expectations are for moving up the pyramid and decide how we're going to balance children and work. Or we're going to have the children, but we're going to have family living with us to supervise the daycare worker, because leaving children with not highly qualified childcare workers is a challenge by itself. That's a whole discussion that needs to happen in society for women today.
And that's affected by economic availability too, financial availability.
Well, financial availability, we don't pay childcare workers enough. I was just reading a bunch of statistics today. In many cities in the country, a childcare worker gets paid $12 an hour. But if you work in the local Wawa market, you get $14 an hour. Okay, think about this, $12, $14. In the Wawa market, you get to talk to adults, When you're with a child, you get to coochie-coo to the child. It's a whole different ballgame. So many care workers are opting to go work in a more social environment as opposed to do care for elderly people or children. That's going to create a massive care shortage for us. We're going to have 1 million caregiver shortage in a couple of years. What are we going to do between aging care and childcare? 1 million caregiver shortage. And if we don't come up with some systemic solutions to address this issue, there's going to be a crunch, because millennials in particular, we need you in the workplace, because if you're not in the workplace, productivity of the country is not very good, because women are today getting more than 50% of the college degrees, 57% of the top grades. So we need women in the workplace. But millennial women, we also want you to have 2.1 kids per person, because that's a replacement rate. Today we're at 1.6. Not a good number to be at. Now, at 1.6, we're going to have to do something serious to make sure the population is replaced the right way. But we can't expect you to have those kids if we don't give you the support system.
Yeah.
So one of the things, I'd like to get to a point where when a woman has a child, we actually send her a letter saying, thank you for your service to the country. Because that's what it is. Thank you for your service to the country. So instead it is like, oh my God, you can do it. You can make your checklist. You've got to figure out a way to have your family and come to work. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think this is a real issue that as a country, as companies, as communities, families, societies, we have to figure out a sensible way to come together and come up with true policy options and start working on this.
I mean, the applause to that tells you what people's opinion is, but why aren't we seeing that reflected? Where's that supposed to come from? Is that federal government down? Is that your corporate CEO on down? Where does that change and policy shift come from?
So I think what happens is, in the past few months since I've stepped down, I've had a lot of time to reflect on this issue. Been reading a lot of stuff that's there. There's a lot of books written about, oh, women, you can do it. You can create your own help systems. You can create your own checklists. You can do it.
But it's your problem to
But it's your problem, the family's problem or the woman's problem. Then there's a whole bunch of books written about, oh my God, what a dreadful problem we have on our hands. And then there's a bunch of solutions which says, yes, there are solutions, but they cost too much money and we can't afford it. At some point, we're going to have to bring the three together and say, look, this problem is not a point problem or a point solution. It's a complex problem with a series of solutions which require a bunch of people to come together to address it in a sensible way. But we have to do it. We have to do it really fast, because every day we have 10,000 boomers retiring. 10,000 boomers. And these boomers, many of them are going to need care going forward. And these millennials are going to have to care for these boomers, because you're the sandwich generation. So between that and the kids, how are you going to make it all work? How are we going to redefine what is family? How are we going to redefine how we share each other's time to create a more nurturing environment? This is going to require a symposium of the kind we've never had to talk about these issues, put a cost to it, and figure out how we're going to address it. Because if we don't, guys, we are going to be facing a major care crisis which we won't know how to address. I'm talking about the next 24 to 36 months. And that's what worries me. Yeah.
So how do you take that idea and put it to work? Should we expect you to run for office?
No.
No?
Because nothing will happen, unfortunately.
Why not? You're very well qualified.
One person. I tell you what, we're trying to bring people together to write something about this. And, to write it in a way that's clear, crisp, that everybody can understand what the problem is and what the solutions are. We've gone so far as to formulate it as a set of equations. So you can actually see it very clearly, the two sides of the equation, how you've got to make it work. And now the real question is, how do we bring the right people around the table to say, okay, This is the set of solutions that will work, and this is how we can pay for it. And the good news is many people in Washington are looking for solutions today. There's many child care bills making their way through Congress.
Paid family leave.
Paid family leave, what kind of support systems we need to have for caregivers. The American Association of Aging is really making this a big issue about care for the aged. So I think we can bring this care crisis together as an issue that galvanizes action, but around that wrap a whole bunch of other factors which together can address this issue. But it's an urgent issue, and believe me, in my wonderful retirement years now, this is one of the things I'm going to focus a lot of my attention on.
How do your daughters feel about this?
They've already suffered through mom not really being there, right? So they are really happy that I'm taking this on. But they're a little bit upset because they're like, Mom, we thought you retired. What happened? Yeah, I've retired because I don't have to worry about quarterly earnings anymore. Mm-hmm. But I really haven't retired because I don't know what retirement is. I don't need to lie on a beach, so I don't know what retirement is. I'm just trying to figure out how to make a difference and pay it forward to all of the women who work so hard, all the families that are struggling to have kids and make a life and make a living. So I think people like us who've had an incredible past, incredible support systems, need to pay it forward. So that's really what I'm focused on.
Why aren't we hearing more companies talk like this, more CEOs talk like this?
I don't know. Look, I'm trying to convene the ex-women CEOs to say we have to sign up to this. I'm going to write and publish on this. We convened a whole bunch of ex-PepsiCo people just a few days ago, ex-PepsiCo women, just awesome women. We're beginning to talk about this issue in groups. Stay tuned. Tina and I have been talking about this, so maybe the next year's Women in the World, this could be a major issue. I don't know. It's up to Tina. But this is an issue. And let me just say in closing, guys, because I know, Margaret, you're going to pull the clock.
Yes.
Guys, I tell you something, we have to stop talking about this as a problem. We have to get to what is the solution.
Yes.
You should demand answers, because we need answers. That's where we are.
100%.
Yep.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Pleasure.